All right, welcome to Beginner's Guide to Tracking in After Effects. We're going to look at the tracking and the trackers that are available. There's a bunch of different ways you can track. I think there's 6 or 7 ways. We're going to look at the basic ones to start, and then we'll do another video with ones that are a little bit more in-depth. But let's just start with a 2D image. Two-dimensional tracking, which means it's going to go left, right, up, and down. And here we have a image of a factory, and it's terrible shape. So the first thing I want to do is stabilize. There's different ways we can stabilize. The warp stabilizer is an automated way, which is great. So if I just click on this, hey, it does it for me. It does a pretty good job. And you can see here there are options in the warp stabilizer. So right now it's smoothing the motion. So those camera moves that were jerky in the original are now smoothed out. I might say I don't want that at all. I actually want to have it have no motion. I can click on that. And I don't know if you noticed, but when I did that, it scaled up quite a bit. And what it's done is it's auto scaling the image. And really it could rotate this as well, although we could do that ourselves. Go on here and hit R and just do a slight rotation, but it's probably going to go off of where it's, so you can see it's breaking the boundaries now, so I'd have to scale it again. And if I do that, it's going to start getting angry. But you can see we've gone far into the image now. And if I don't do this right here, it's on stabilize, crop, and auto scale. If I just put stabilize only, you can see it moving around inside. That's the warp stabilizer, and this is great if you have footage that's, handheld that you want to just stabilize a bit. It's not always going to be perfect, as you can see in here when you do no motion and we auto scale and crop and then scale again to fix our rotation fix. You can see there's camera blur that's in here, right there, right there, and that's built into the camera moving itself. So that comes from the shutter of the camera. There's nothing we can do about that. Except for, maybe copy frames from one before it and after it and see if that would work. But for now, this is fine. So it's the warp stabilizer, and that's a very useful tool. Like I said, used to be a lot more useful when you had GoPros, but the GoPros nowadays have such great built-in image stabilization. Even phones have really good stabilizers. So if you're using those, then maybe you've already got this solved. But you never know when you're getting your footage. You might be getting it in a documentary, all sorts of footage from different sources. So this is one of the tools that's in your toolbox. We go back to the factory. Let's try a manual stabilization. So here we have stabilize motion. Now we're going to do this manually, and what it's going to do when I click on it is create a tracking point. So the tracking point, what I can do is I can place it over any point in the image. What you're looking for is something like this, something that's got a lot of contrast to it. So anything here, like right here, anything that is of a similar tone, like this stuff in here, it's not going to have anything to hold on to, but it can hold on to that, it can hold on to that. So that's what we want to do. And you can expand just how much of this box. So this is just saying this is where you're looking, and this is where, if the camera starts moving too much, it'll look outside of that area to say, where'd that little dot go? And here you'll see in your tracking controls you have now you have a play forwards, play backwards, 1 frame at a time. It has edit target, but we're not going to do that right now because we don't need a target. It's stabilizing this footage, so that's more for the track motion button. So what I want to do now is just analyze it. And if I was at the middle of a shot, like say here, I can analyze it either way. As long as I start in this spot and say that's the spot I want, I can analyze it forward, and I can analyze it backwards. And you can see here it's done a really good job. So if I like what I see, I still have one more step to do, and that is to hit apply. You might do the track and think you're done and don't hit apply, then you'll find, uh-oh, nothing happened. What's going on? I want to apply this now. So when I hit apply, and all of these, of course, are keyframes that you can edit. So if there's something wonky goes off on one frame, you can always get rid of that one of these, or get rid of multiple ones, depends. Because sometimes it's like frame to frame, it'll get jittery, so you can start removing some. It's up to you. But here you can see it's doing a pretty good job. But look at the background. Now I can amplify that by turning that on there, you see. So you say it doesn't look stable because I see all this movement. But if I go in here and I scale this up now and reposition it or something, sort of the way it was in the warp stabilizer, then there you go. But you can see there's a rotation on this as well, so there's something going on. So I'm going to start again. This time I'm going to add rotation. So now I'm going to stabilize motion. Come back to that same screen, and I can zoom in and out as you want. I'm just using my scroll wheel. You can command or control plus or minus. And of course your space bar will get you your hand to move around an image, find the best spot. So I want it rotating between a few different spots. I don't want things too close together. I want them to be a little further apart. So I'm going to turn on the position here and rotation. And I'll say 0.1. I want to be this point like we just used. And we'll make it a little bigger. And 0.2, let's say this one here might be fine. And I'll make the outside a little bigger. And this time it's going to do both position and rotation. And backwards. And again, I want to apply this. Hit apply, hit OK. Now when I do my playback, it should be holding it nice and steady. And again, what I'll do is I'll scale this. So you might say to yourself, why not just do a still frame? And as I've said before, you know, you want the grain in the image. This has noise in the image. You want to have the moving clouds, or if there's foreground motion, things like that, that give it life, so it doesn't look like you just pasted a still on. And here you go. You can see it's working pretty good. So you're just doing a manual version. And the reason why you want to know all this is because sometimes not everything's going to work for you 100%. You may have to do more manually, and all these tools are here for you to do that. So I can't tell you when that you're going to need this, or if you're ever going to need it, but sometimes you do want to use it. And know now too, you have all the tracking data that is been gleaned from this. So this all has tracking data. So if you want to use any of the information from that data, you can apply that to different things. So for example, if I just went up here and created a shape for no good reason, but I wanted this shape to move with the shot before, or have the data from that camera, all that I have to do is parent it to this factory footage. What is parenting again? Well, parenting is when you take a layer like this shape layer, which I say I want to make this a child. Well, I want the child to follow the parent. Do whatever the parent does. Whatever it does, you do, okay? And you say, okay. So now I'm going to say, okay, well, take this little pick whip, and I can whip it there, or I can use the drop down menu and just choose the layer. Can be a layer underneath that you can't get to with the whip, but I'm going to take the whip for fun. Do that, and now I'm just saying take all the motion data from this. And you'll see now it's moving, but it's moving in the same way that the factory footage actually moves. It's kind of backwards, but there would be a reason to use this, say in a rotoscope or something that's probably too complicated to talk about. But for now, just know that you can use the tracking data that you get from it, even if you aren't actually using the layer. Now it's like a null object. And remember, a null object is just a layer that contains data. So, and you can take its data and apply it to any other layer. So like this. So now I have, that perfect little camera move. Is it useful? Yes. When is it useful? In some very particular instance that it will become useful. That's usually how a compositor can answer that question. Yeah, I never thought I'd need to use that, would be something they would say. But there you go. So in the same way, if I take this factory and I just want to track it the same way, I can do track motion. But now with the motion tracker, I can apply this to something like a null object. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to create a null object. And instead of applying the tracking data to itself, I'm going to apply it to this null. And I'll just call this camera movement. And I'm going to take this city factory footage again. And I'm going to do the same thing as I just did. Because you're excited by... Oh, not again. Yes. Turn on my clicker. These seem to be pretty successful spots. So let's use them. Expand our view so we don't have to do it twice. And there we go. So track again, forward and back. And you can see here track scale as well, but since this isn't moving in and out, I'm not going to worry about the scale. So I'm just going to say track along. So now I have this tracking data and I want to apply it somewhere. Well, I'm going to edit my target and it's going to come up with a dialog box and I'm going to say put it to that null, which I've named camera movement. So apply it to that and I'm going to hit apply. I'll hit OK and that's perfect. And now if I have text or anything, a piece of text that I want to place in here, let's call it factory. Factory. And I'll take the color of the text from this red down here maybe. Hit OK. Whatever. This is just for getting the point. We'll place it wherever we want to place it. And this, your caps lock is what does this. So if your caps lock is on, it'll even tell you your caps lock is on. This is actually good though, because if your computer's bogging down and you're trying to do something, and it's, this is just a good way of moving something without it having to re-render the frame and then save you some time and waiting. All right, so factory. So factory, what was we going to do when we play it back right now? It's on the screen like that. But if I wanted to, now I can make it a child of the camera movement. Say, follow the camera movement, which is basically just data from the city factory. There you go. Locked. But what's great here is I can then put multiple things on the null object, and I can have multiple null objects. So if I wanted to track a point here and put it on a null, and then track another point and put it on a separate null, I can null my till my heart's content. Null as much as I want to. So if I put this on the null as well, camera movement. There we go. Now also know though that these can have their own properties as well. So I can hit S scale this. It's still going to follow the the null, but since I don't have any scaling properties here, I can actually scale this up as it's following the null. Probably be a bit easier to see on the factory. Go home, scale. Of course, got to be aware that it's going to scale from our anchor point, but that's okay for this. We're not worried. We're not making art. So there you go. So you can use it in all different ways. So that's the different kinds of trackers you can do in the two-dimensional space. Warp stabilizer we've done, stabilize motion we've done, and track motion we've done. And with the track motion tracker, you'll see that there is more that we're doing that I'm not showing you yet. So if I were to start over again here, here was our original shot. If I go into track motion, and this will be for our more advanced tutorial, you can see track type is more than just transform. There is stabilize again, parallel corner pin, perspective corner pin, and raw. Now we'd be interested in the corner pins because it'd be much more useful for you guys because you're probably using stuff like where you're replacing screens, like computer screens or screens on a phone. And this is where you can use tracking to replace screens, and we'll do that in the next tutorial. And for the last one is track camera, which is putting us now into a three-dimensional space. But this is fairly automated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this old warplanes. I'll look at this footage. So just the footage of some planes. I haven't gone to the website dc3.com.au, but since it's Australian, I did get a graphic. Believe it or not, this is the Australian Air Force logo. Ours is a maple leaf, theirs is a kangaroo. So there we go. So now what I want to do is I'm going to try to put this onto one of these planes. So this is really great for any product placement thing or additional work you want to do for a set. It could be putting something on a set art direction wise. It could be all sorts of, things. It's up to your imagination as to how you can use this. But say our client here at dc3.com said, we didn't get the logo on here, but we really like to have the Australian Air Force logo on this. Would you be able to do that for us? And we'll say, of course, but it'll cost you a few extra dollars. And without telling them, it's actually going to be a lot easier than they think. Although, as you guys know, just opening up After Effects and putting something into it is daunting. So you're already worth money by being able to just work in After Effects. Not be afraid of it. So what I want to do is I want to track the camera now. So I'm going to hit the old planes and I'm just going to say track camera. Now it didn't take too long for me, which is great. Pretty short time. But you can see it's created all these little tracking markers. So it's trying to figure out which markers it can lock into, and the colors are all correspond to how well it thinks it's doing. But you can see here on the green window here, that thing is locked right in. That might be a great place to start, because what I want to do is select a couple of these. That's green, and that's green, and this is what I want, is like a plane that I can attach something to, whether it be text or, in our case, a graphic, but I'll show you text as well in a sec. All this data is in here, and it's all in three-dimensional space. It's trying to solve the camera. It's called 3D Solved. And of course, you can explore all about different, things that you can do with the 3D camera, but let's just keep it simple for our test purposes. And I'm going to do now is I'm just going to right-click on this, and I'm going to say create a solid in a camera. And now you'll see that it's put it into three-dimensional space. It hasn't done it to the planes, but it's done to everything that is going to track onto the planes. So let's go to our 3D tracking camera. And what I want to do is I actually want to replace this solid now. But first I can see how the solid's doing. Can't really tell. It's a good test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it right down and just see. Did we get a good spot or not get a good spot? Well, that's locked in pretty good there. Alright, so what I want to do is replace this though with that logo I had. And it's really easy. You just have to make sure you click on your layer. This is the important thing. You have to select the layer that you want to replace. Select the thing you want to replace it with. And then when you click and hold on to this, then you hit Alt. Hold down your Alt key. Drag it over top and it will, voila, replace that graphic. So again, you'll probably have to rewind anyway. You have to make sure that you click on the layer that you want to replace. Click on the replacement item. Hold it down and then hold down your Alt and or Option, and there you go. And it's covering it up so we can't really tell what's going on. So now what I want to do is scale this again like the other one until we get it sort of into place. Now of course it wouldn't be on a window, so I'm going to move it up a little bit here, or move it over a little bit. Again, I'm staying away from the Z-axis. I don't want to play with the Z-axis. Rotating it's fine. Moving it up and down is fine. Left and right. The only thing I'm trying to avoid is changing its position in depth. So I'm going to hit S again for scale. And let's go to 3%. There we go. And it kind of looks a bit wonky. It doesn't quite work. You can see here it's starting to rise up. So it's not quite on there. But you get the idea, and with a little finesse. And you may want to just choose different points. So let's try a different point. Let's get rid of that. We'll get rid of the camera. We'll go back to our tracker. It's already tracked, so you don't have to do this again. So I just hit E for effects. Click on the camera tracker, and voila, it's back again. So let's just try the tail. It's giving me this sort of big one here. I'm just going to right click on this and say, let's do solid in a camera again. It's done what I've asked. Click on it. Click on this. Hold down Alt. Replace it. I'm thinking it's done a good job, but I don't know that it has. Bring this down. That looks like it should belong there better than it did where I had it. Rotate it slightly. Move it over a little bit. Let's just see how this one works. I think for the general viewer, they're not really going to notice. If it slips a tiny little bit at the end where you can see it moving up. But it's in three-dimensional space, so it's really hard to tell. And now what you just want to do is use all of your tricks, right? You're going to put it on an overlay of some sort. Possibly you can, here you can also, what's really important, this is something you should really look at, is turning on your motion blur, and this turns it on for the entire composition. So everything can have motion blur now. But here is where you target it. You say, I just want this to have motion blur. So if you had 14 other layers that don't need motion blur, don't turn them on. And it's not moving that much, so I imagine there isn't much motion blur. And for your compositing eye, if you say, well, you know, there's a couple of things here what I might want to do is I might want to do a color correction. It's quite warm, so I can do like manual color correction, or I can just go to the photo filter here. Choose a nice warming filter. That's a little too much, eh? Try warm it up a little bit. And what you might find too with something like this, it's pretty sharp. These things will be a little bit soft, so you might even just add just a tiny, tiny little bit of blur. Go to your Gaussian blur and ever so slightly try 0.5 or something. And if that doesn't work, try 1. Little baby steps. And there you go. You're just trying to make it look like it's a part of the scene. Again, the other thing as well is that if I go to my tracker, I can do all sorts of things. So I can actually put, let's try text. Just see what happens. So I have a text layer. Can move it around. And there you go. But, you know, if this is just a quick little first attempt at something, it's great. It's working in 3D just like everything else. And we can just say dc3.com. Scale our text. Choose the color of the grass. And you can add your drop shadows and all sorts of things that you want. So there you have it. Those are all the different simple items from the tracker menu. If you don't have the tracker menu and you're screaming at your computer right now, remember everything in After Effects is all of your panels are here in the Windows item. And if you find out in After Effects that things are all getting a little crazy, you can go to Workspace, you can hit all panels. It's got preset workspaces. And when you're done something that you're not exactly sure what you're doing, just go back to default and then you can try the different workspaces. So effects, there you go, the effects and presets are up. The tracker isn't apparent right now, so then I just go window, oh, tracker's there. There I go, I clicked on it and there it is. And there you go. Until next time.